You know those teen vampire movies that feel like the horny soap opera fever dreams of an 8th grade diary? You know those teen vampire movies that feel like the horny soap opera fever dreams of an 8th grade diary? Here's how mine began.
The graduating class of Central Oregon High.
Be safe.
Oh my God, guys, I'm gonna be fine. My first night in LA, and it's already the best night in LA.
Hi. We're going to after hours party if you want to come. That's enough. Shoveled a lot in your life, haven't you? How would you like to hold the keys to the kingdom for a change? Now would be the time for any questions.
Were you guys like
Vampires?
Yup. Do you guys kill people?
Indiscriminately.
Innocent people?
It's like 80-20. Rule number 1, never turn a man into a vampire. Men can't handle power. Welcome to Fight Club.
Fight Club?
What about Bit Girls? Sounds like we're part of STEM or something. Welcome home.
What, no coffin?
Why would we do that?
'Cause it's dope.
You're staying away from drugs, right?
Yes, Mom. My life's a horror movie. Life's full of things you never think should happen, and then it does. I'm going to be 18 forever.
People just think you're aging well.
What is up, everyone, and happy Halloween. My name is Jerry Smith, writer from Dread Central, and we are back with another one of our series panels, Dissecting Horror, where we like to do reunions, Q&As, conversations, anything under the sun. I am so excited today for this panel. We're talking about a film that I saw during its festival run last year, and it just immediately took me by surprise. It instantly became a movie that I revisit quite often, and a movie that I'm just a huge, huge fan of. And we're talking about Brad Elmore's Bit, joined today by, you know her, you love her, my co-moderator, BJ Colangelo. What is up, BJ?
Hi, everyone. Yes, also big, unabashed fangirl for this movie. Have written about it in multiple places. If you've seen somebody yelling about Bit on Twitter, it was probably me, and you're welcome.
We have a excellent group today to talk about the film. We have the writer, director, Brad Elmore. What is up, man?
How's it going? Happy to be here.
Good. Happy to have you. And we have the film stars, Nicole Maines. How's it going, Nicole?
Hi, it's going pretty good. Happy Halloween.
And last but not least, Mr. James Paxton, looking suave as ever.
Well, thank you, Jerry. Happy to be here. Happy Halloween.
I feel so bad because I juggled whether or not I wanted to dress up for this. And then we all signed on and James showed up looking cool. And I was looking for the closest sheet just to throw over myself, but I can't find one. So, like I said, I love this movie. I think it's a breath of fresh air in the vampire subgenre. Like, we've all seen so many movies that kind of tackle the same kind of aesthetic and everything. And as someone who grew up adoring The Lost Boys since childhood, I mean, I saw it in the theater very young, and it made me feel like just excited about the genre. And Bit was another film that did that. It almost felt like kind of a spiritual continuation of that in a really good way. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. Jumping right in, Brad, the story of getting Bit from when you wrote it to being released is an interesting one, because we've had this conversation before. I'm curious if you could kind of speak on the journey of where it went, because originally you had written it for a female director, right?
In mind, that's sort of what I thought would be maybe a better idea. I wouldn't say it was like a hard law of mine, but I wrote it definitely with my mindset being like I like maybe pass this on to a different director, and I was pushing for a female director because I thought maybe that lens would help it a little bit. But the company, I can't say who, but the, the the company that was interested um, just what was not you got to pay the bills, and there was somebody offering money a contingent that I directed, so I could not say no to that, which was you know which is why I ultimately decided to direct it too. um, was it's really hard to it's nearly impossible to get any movie made ever for any reason, and so when there is like more realistic um, financial, like this could happen at with a budget in place, like it's hard to not jump on it, especially at the time, because it would at 30 at 32 I was really itching to be like I need to step up in budget a little bit, because my first two movies are so micro budget. So, and not that Bit had a large budget, but like I didn't have to sell my car to make it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like that was a plus. Um, yeah. So that's how that came about. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned your two previous films. The film that you made before Bit, Boogeyman Pop, that's not released yet. Did the experience of having to wait for a film to be released, did that kind of inspire you to kind of like, you know what, I need to get in and then make something that kind of can be, in front of people's eyes a little sooner than the project that I just did?
Boogeyman Pop took a long time to make. It was made in steps. So and it's caught up in sort of like a red tape situation. So yeah, that was very frustrating. I wouldn't say it was, because I'm always hungry to try to get a movie made. I think anybody's, as I mean, I'm sure BJ knows, she's a filmmaker, and Jerry, you dabble in film in all sorts of ways. You're also a filmmaker. You're always kind of hungry to get to the next thing, like as quickly as possible. For me, it was more of I because I made Boogeyman Pop, that kind of got me in conversations with more genre like people, and I felt like, if anything, I knew if I wrote a genre script at a certain budget level, it was more likely to get made. So it was more like capitalizing on that. Like Boogeyman Pop helped me capitalize on maybe that world becoming more available to me.
So a question that I have is, going from something like Wolfman's Hammer and Boogeyman Pop into something like Bit that is so aggressively pro-fem, where did that come from for you to write? Like, where did that story come to you and you're like, this, I have to tell this story?
I think it was, the certain conversations that I'd just been interested in or been paying attention to for a few years, and sort of my sort of like come to Jesus moment on maybe ways in which I might have been the bad guy. I don't know a better way to put it. We like, so much of life is a negotiation, and the more empathy or the smarter you get or whatever, you're trying to negotiate who you are and how it might rub up against other people, and who are you stepping on that you don't know, because I think most people wouldn't want to, and so like that kind of realization kind of fueled into it. But also I think that it was just also just I made two somber movies that were very like sort of like dour and arid and grungy, and I just wanted to do something that was much more like pop song, and so that all those things just sort of congealed together. I thought that'd be a good lens with which to examine maybe some of the things I was just on my mind. I think it was just the stuff that was on my mind at the time, I guess, you know.
When it came to casting, having seen the movie quite a few times now, I can't picture anyone other than Nicole and James in those roles. I'm curious, when developing it and writing it, did you have anyone in mind, or did you write it in particular for either of them?
I wrote the role of Mark for James Paxton. I did not know Nicole at all, which is weird because I'd actually read the book Becoming Nicole, but that was so early in the research. I'd actually
available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
It's a quite fantastic book, but I'd actually written it for James because I'd worked with James on my last movie, and I want to put him in everything I do. And so I wrote it specifically for him, and only him. But the role of Laurel, I had no idea who we were going to cast, and that to me was also going to be crucial to maybe how we thought about the character, because I didn't want to box in too much of her outside of outside of her personality, which in the script was actually much more like a Daria, like Morgendorfer, like sort of thing, like a much more like droll in the script. And but yeah, so it was through the process of casting that I saw Nicole and her reel, and then it became like it's Nicole or it's nobody. Like from our first Skype meeting, I was like, no, this is it's got to be Nicole, you know.
Mm-hmm. When you came across the project, Nicole, reading it, did it just stand out more than like any other projects that you were reading at the time, or what really stood out about it to you that you wanted to kind of meet with Brad and kind of potentially take the film on?
Yeah, well, I think what stood out to me first about the film was just how incredibly fun it was, and how much of a breath of fresh air it felt for me, because after having auditioned for a lot of trans roles for a long time, they all kind of started feeling very, very similar. And when I got the sides for Laurel and when I read the script, I was like, she is very, very different from the parts I've been reading for. And because she's not just like the trans character, like that's not what she's about, and that's not who she is. Her whole, and she had like this fun Daria vibe, and her story was not grounded in her gender identity. And while at the same time, the politics of the movie are very front and center, but I think it's done in a way that it's not, I don't know, maybe to other people it does, but to me it didn't feel like uber super preachy, because I think it was offset just enough with good vampire fucking punk rock fun. And I think for me it presented these issues in a new way, in a new light that I hadn't seen before. And I was like, oh fuck, I want to be a part of this.
So how do you feel about the people who, in my experience, haven't even seen the film, but hear of the concept of sort of this, like, you know, the politics are front and center, and they avoid the film because of it? What are your feelings about that type of horror fan?
I just want to tell them, well, really, more than anything, I want to thank them for the endless amount of press and marketing that they've done for the film, because their tears have just propelled it into a new level of just masterpiece-ness. It is the best way to kind of market this film, is to have these types of people crying about it and arguing about it and making YouTube videos about it and talking about, oh my God, this movie is so fucking gay. I'm like, yes, good, good, yes. And so having them talk about it is, listen, any press is good press, and it is living rent free in their minds and in their friends' minds, and they are sending it forth out into the internet, and people are hearing about it and people are watching it. And I mean, I hope that people hear about it, do watch it, and maybe hopefully learn something. And if they don't, well, they bought the movie anyway.
Right. James, Brad mentioned writing the role for you. Like, as an actor, I mean, was that kind of a good feeling to be like, oh, this character quite literally was written for me? And when you read the script, was it something that just got you excited to work on, having worked with Brad in the past?
Oh yeah. Excited is an understatement. I mean, it was the coolest feeling ever because it was very full circle. Brad gave me my first major role in a film in Boogeyman Pop, like when I had just been living in LA a couple of years and been starting. And, at that point in my career, I mean, I'm still grinding it out, as we all are, just slugging audition after audition. To have a role that was written specifically for me in mind, this was the first role that was written ever specifically for me in mind. And it was just an insane feeling, but it came with an added amount of pressure because I was extra motivated to nail it because of it. I really, like, it kind of consumed me, and I thought about the character so much, and I worked on the scenes so many times, just trying to get that balance. And I was really, before I met Nicole, hoping that we would hit it off because I wanted to do such a great job, and I wanted to portray a really accurate sibling relationship. And I have a little sister in real life, and Nicole and I hit it off immediately. We spent like a whole day like walking around downtown LA and going to get food and going to take photos in a photo booth, and it was just a lot of fun. And I probably went on a whole rant there, but yeah, it was a very special feeling for me. I could never repay Brad for that honor. It was amazing.
There's so much to, I think, latch onto for anyone that has a sibling with this movie. I think the chemistry between you both is just unparalleled, in my opinion. I mean, I revisited the film this morning to prep for this, and there's a scene that you two have together towards almost the end of the film, kind of this confrontation scene. And I was telling the tech people before this panel how I really feel like that's one of my favorite scenes of the last couple of years, because there's just like honesty and frustration, being an older brother, wanting what's best for your sibling, but at the same time, like, wanting to kind of carve your own path as well and being frustrated about that. Like, it's just one of my favorite scenes around. You mentioned having a day to kind of get to know each other. How was it to play off of each other as siblings in the film once it got going? Did you find it easy to instantly get into that groove? Because, I mean, if you didn't know better, like, it comes off like you guys really are, you two really are siblings. It's believable. It's a really good chemistry.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was very, very easy to kind of get into those scenes. I mean, it wasn't easy to do that confrontation scene because, as he's like fucking yelling at me, I was like, I just wanted to like give him a hug. I'm like, I'm sorry. I have been a selfish bitch. But yeah, I mean, that first day where we went out and had lunch, and I mean, nothing was off limits, and we just talked about everything. And I found myself telling James about things I was like, I don't tell people this, what the fuck. And so it really became that kind of, for me anyway, that kind of sibling relationship. And so doing those scenes, I think there was that foundation of trust there, and so it was really, really easy to kind of get into that group, because I was like, I trust this person and I can just be open and honest in this performance, in this scene.
Yeah, and entirely. Like Nicole said, we really just both of us just shared so much with each other when we first met. It was kind of like we were downloading like so much of what we've been through in life, like onto each other to kind of like help start that foundation and history behind the relationship. Because when you get a script, so much is not on the page, but it will show through in the movie if you do that foundational work, if you go down those channels to really like look at where your character comes from, like what their relationship might be like with people in their life, with just stuff that might not ever get mentioned in the film, but it is there because it comes through, and like you were saying, Jerry, like the with an authentic feeling on screen. And also Nicole is so funny, and like it's just so much fun to be around, that like those scenes were easy because I just felt like, not the last scene, that scene was very tough actually, but all the other ones were just fun, and it was easy to riff and try things like the Call of Duty line that I threw in there after she leaves.
Best line in the movie.
That I just made that up on the spot. That one. Most everything's Brad's brilliance on the page, but it was like that riffing back and forth was really easy. But the last scene was really intense. I was like trying to really stay in a headspace, and I think after the first or second take, I like walked over and kind of to a private corner and just like had a little cry, because it was so intense, and you have to work yourself up to such a point. But and it's hard to be that angry at Nicole, but so
many people would disagree.
You mentioned most of the lines being straight from Brad. That's actually something I really wanted to quickly ask, because every time I see the movie, and even knowing that the line's going to come, every time the Cheetah Girls line happens, like I just lose it. Like it's such a it's spoken like so quickly, but it's just so witty. Like, was that from the script, Brad?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Hockey.
He's like,
no, it just was. I have about a little over a decade on I think Nicole and James, and so I figured their age group was like, because I've never seen the Cheetah Girls ever.
You're missing out.
Oh my
I've just
God.
never seen it. But I figured that would be something that somebody in their late teens, early 20s probably watched when they were a kid. So it'd be like a shared touchstone thing. Like I was trying to make sure they didn't just use my references, because they're like, I was writing younger characters. I thought it'd be strange if they're like kicking ass with En Vogue. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that'd be weird. So
Jim and the holograms to us would be the Cheetah Girls for that generation.
Sure, exactly. Like,
yeah.
So it was just like this, I just figured that would be like a younger person touchstone.
I did want to ask regarding the actual script. As a white male, did you look to anyone else, like anyone within the LGBTQ community, to help with the actual, not just terminology, but getting the characters right? Did you have any help with that?
I would not say I had like help in the like the writing. More so that once I was finished, I was like, I reached out to people to vet it, to see what am I missing? Am I fucking up somewhere? Am I coding something into something that might be that could be taken the wrong way? Because you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And that was because the actual writing of the script, I just can't work that way of like, I need to just dive in and do research, and my research is both drawing from life experience and just hitting the books, just like there are resources out there you can do the work to, I think the creative process is, I think a lot of people who are creative, like empathy and exploration are the two most attractive things about making something. So yeah, I'm like the white straight male, I'm trying not to shove my foot in my mouth here, but that the trying to explore things outside yourself is the action and the juice of making things too,
Totally.
Sizemore.
Yeah, you caught that reference.
So Nicole, you spoke briefly about how a lot of the roles that you'd been auditioning for sort of blended into the same character. What is it specifically about Laurel and about this story do you think that makes this character so important? I guess in today's climate, and honestly, just in kind of the trajectory of trans characters in cinema.
Yeah, I think for Laurel, what makes her so important and made her so different from me was she really felt like a wholly three-dimensional character that was not ever just painted with one brush. I think that, and I think it's the same thing that makes her so compelling as a protagonist, is that she is never like, I'm the good guy of this movie. She's very like, makes stupid choices, makes mistakes, and she's very honestly like that 18-year-old just went to Los Angeles. She's gonna do whatever the fuck she wants. And I think that's why so many people can like sympathize her when you're watching the movie, is because we've all kind of been there. We've all made choices that we know are stupid, but we do it anyway. Like, how the fuck are you gonna meet a girl at a bar in Los Angeles and you're just gonna leave and go to never let them take you to a second location, first of all, and then never let them take you to a second location at the second location. That's how you end up sleeping in a dump. And I think it's those kinds of moments and ditching James, ditching Mark and ditching Andy. Wholly kind of selfish decisions, but that's how you are at that age. And I think that's what makes her so important and so compelling, is that she is just honestly a teenager, and honestly Laurel, and that's why there was so much depth to her, and that's why I felt so drawn to her, and why I feel like she's so important, is because she isn't just one thing ever. She is herself, and she's gonna make mistakes, and she might try to fix those mistakes, maybe, or she'll try to kill someone she meets on the sidewalk. You know, it's a spectrum.
You're right.
You know, Nicole, Nicole, you had a really great TED talk that people could look up on YouTube right now, and it's really great, and you're very open about the battles that you've had to face. One of the things that stood out to me about BIT, and goes back to what I was mentioning about the film Lost Boys, that I kind of like, it kind of feels like a spiritual cousin to that, is that both films are very much about someone just looking for just like a crew that has their back, you know, like somewhere to fit in, somewhere to belong. And I think we've all been through that in life. You know, in your TED talk, you mentioned, you know, finally finding a school that kind of accepted you and like lifted you up and stuff. Yeah. And I think the crew led by Duke and everyone in BIT, it kind of comes off to Laurel like that kind of crew at first. You know, having that experience in your own life, was that something that maybe you drew on when approaching the character, or were you able to completely just, this is a role, this is what I'm going to do, without drawing any similarities to like your own personal journey?
Well, I think playing Laurel was so special to me because it came at we were at similar points, I think, in our journey. You know, I was just kind of that was my first kind of stint in Los Angeles at the same time as it was Laurel's. And so as I was doing those scenes, like when we went to the Echo, it's like, I'd never been to a club like that in a city like that. And so there was a lot of similarities there. And so a lot of those emotions I was able to just draw on from what I was feeling in that current moment. And I think as far as the crew goes and that kind of feeling of found family, I think it works, and I think it works for different reasons. For me, of course, the school was so important to me because I had been in an environment where I wasn't able to wholly be myself in the first place. Because, you know, and it's hard to feel self-assured when you're in an environment where you're constantly surrounded by people telling you, you're shit, you're garbage, you don't belong here. And it's kind of like, all right, well, how am I supposed to thrive in this environment? And I think for Laurel, There was a little bit of that, but that her finding Bite Club or the Bit Girls, whatever you will call them, came after a point where she had already gone through that transformation and she was sure of who she was, and her gender journey was over before this movie started. I think her draw to this group of girls was that wasn't news and that wasn't who she is, and she didn't have to think about it, she didn't have to worry about it, because she was coming from an environment where everybody knew her business. And we kind of see that in the first, scene in the movie where, the dude comes up and he's like, listen, I just gotta tell you, man, I think what you're doing is so fucking awesome. And she's like, okay, cool. I really don't want to talk about this because, I got other shit going on. And so for Duke to just say, that never crossed my mind, that's like a breath of fresh air. And that's like, oh, holy shit, I can just fucking be a person and I can just be myself and I don't have to be the token anything. Except maybe, like the token, like freaking morality complex, whatever. But yeah, I think for different reasons, I definitely gone through a similar thing, but for different reasons.
Brad, being originally from Oregon, your first film, Wolfman's Hammer, is very much an Oregon film. I lived there for a big chunk of my life, so that movie was like almost like seeing a hour and a half or whatever the running time is. Look at like people that I knew then. Bit is very much a Los Angeles film. It just feels like a Los Angeles film. How was it to do a movie that was just like very different than the kind of like earlier stuff that you did?
I was it's funny that you say it's a very Los Angeles film. I can't help but see it as like the movie that it is and how we filmed it and how the limited our locations and how much cheating is going on. So to me, I wish it was more opened up and more LA.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it just feels like I'm just stuck in a lot. But it was I'd like to say it was fun, but it was hard. It was a pain in the fucking ass, Uh-oh.
Bye, Brad.
There we are. It was a pain in the ass. I think the bigger transition was less the LA of it and more the idea of artifice. I like, you reach a because my first movies were micro budget, you can actually achieve one of the strengths of that is that you can actually achieve a sort of like almost docu-style reality out of that. But you reach a certain budget level where it actually becomes harder for things to become realistic looking because schedules are tight and you're paying major departments and like you can't have everything look distressed when lived in to such a degree. So then once I saw that being like a challenge, I was like, I'm going to lean into artifice. I'm going to make this really just like sugary and pop. And I'd never tried that before. And that was like and in some respects, I think it's not entirely successful all the time. Because it is like a sort of style and aesthetic I hadn't really done. I'd definitely done like lurid and clubs and things like that and young people, but the sort of like sheen, the sort of, I like decided, okay, this is going to be a little CW-y, but that's okay. I'm going to make the most R-rated CW episode of all time, and that's kind of the audience I wanted to see it anyway. So I just embraced that as a language unto itself, that kind of look and vibe, because the actual LA aspect of it was less of a consideration. So much of that movie is filmed in basically one location.
There's this odd kind of approach that so many people have, especially on social media, where you can't enjoy both types of films. Like there's people that like, no, anything outside of indie is just the devil, and then there's the people that are just like, I will not watch anything that Paul Thomas Anderson, doesn't do. Like, speaking on, Wolfman's Hammer and Boogeyman Pop being kind of down and dirty, like you said, and Bit being a little more produced, a little glossier and stuff. As someone that appreciates both types of films, I think films like this one that has that extra kind of pop feeling to it, there's definitely a place for them in the genre. It's interesting that, like, especially genre fans, horror fans, they almost try to pit themselves against each other for, like, indie versus, a little like bigger budget. Nicole, having done this film and then going on to do Supergirl, is there a different kind of approach for you as a performer to, the way that you approach like each project?
Yeah. Well, I think the major difference for me as a performer is in film versus television, because of course in a film you have a whole character arc sort of set up right in front of you in one script, whereas in television you just kind of have to gauge your performance and you have to gauge your character arc based off of, okay, what do I know? What have I done in the past 2 episodes? What am I doing this episode? And what am I going to be doing for the rest of the season? Like, and so you kind of have to, for me anyway, I have to kind of pace myself. And I think it was a little harder kind of coming from Bit and kind of having that whole arc in one script, because I was so, every time I get a script, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to have a whole arc in one episode. And that kind of makes for bad TV. But yeah, I think for me, it was just in the difference in, trying to pace yourself and what your character goes through.
Even before getting into the viewer questions, because we have a good amount of them actually, which is awesome. I'm just going to rip off one of their questions. The film kind of ends with the possibility, or even just like a joke about sequels. Is there any chance of us getting another one? Because I'm sure I can speak for everyone that's seen the movie. We would definitely want one.
Yes, and it's going to be a Western.
I hate you, Nicole.
It's too late. It's been established.
Please. Yes, please. Just as
I'm just saying, we could have little spurs in the shapes of bats.
Nicole just wants to make it a Dolly Parton movie.
Am I still wrong for that?
I'm not gonna let her.
Would you tell this guy to stop being so dang blue?
You're a ham. You know that? You're a ham. So I would love to do more with those characters. That would be really fun for me. A sequel is dependent on its financial status or how well it does. If that opportunity comes up at some point, I absolutely have the whole thing worked out. I think, I think there's some things I'd like to address in a sequel that I got a little beat up on in the first one, because there's some characters in the Vampire Squad who don't have as much screen time due to for tons of reasons, but I do have one bone to pick with that criticism though, where it's like, well, how come I'd like to see more of Roy, or I'd like to see more of Frog? It's like, the fact that you know their names and care about them at all in any way is, nobody ever criticized the Lost Boys for the fact that you can't remember any of those motherfuckers but Kiefer Sutherland, Like, nobody's like, how come we don't hear from Alex Winter, It's like, I don't even know I've watched The Lost Boys 80 billion times. I love that movie to death, clearly. The entirety of Bit is me satisfying, like, my love for that film, but I don't know the names of those other vampires. I know
what
Star.
The hell ever happened to whatever his name is?
And I'm just like, like, how come that movie can get away with it? But if I would like in the sequels to actually expand those characters more, and I have a very clear idea of where I'd go next and what the themes of to address next is, because I wouldn't want to repeat anything. I think if the first movie is about anything, it's about power structures and minority voices being allowed into power structures. to give them more nuance is like the sort of substrate theme. And I think like, well, the next one would be, what does leadership mean? And is where I would take that from there.
I'm glad that you brought up that major criticism, because I think that's very reflective of how films that tend to be centered around women and women characters, they tend to be held to a lot higher of a standard. And I think people are already on the edge of like, they're looking for things to be wrong with it because this is a woman movie and we got to find something wrong with it. So even when you do something successful, which I do think that bit is extremely successful in the way that it handles a lot of those power dynamics within groups of women, you know, there are still going to be people that are unsatisfied. And I'm glad that it's at the forefront of your mind that a sequel would have, you know, more time for those characters that we didn't get the chance to meet. Well, we met them, but like not get to know them a little bit better. So I'm glad that that's at the forefront of your mind, but also understanding that people just tend to be more critical of women-led cinema because they're looking for something to be mad about.
Yeah, I noticed.
You know, Brad, you know, we've talked in private about this, and also you mentioned it on Twitter a few times, so I feel comfortable asking. You know, you mentioned your preferred edit of bit being quite different than what ended up being, you know, and as much as we all love the film, I'm curious what part of that, like what edit did you have in mind? Like, was there subplots that you wanted kind of fleshed out more than they ended up being that you had filmed, or what was?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the movie exists as it is, and I'm very proud of it, and it lives in the world that way. And but I'd say it's like 85% my edit, and that other 15% is some interstitial transitional elements that I would not have put in there, and some of them I was able to. I mean, the entirety of post for me was a big fight, because I in my estimation, the what the producers were going for was like, I was trying to snipe a niche, and they became very much aware of trying to broaden its appeal, which I think is a mistake. And I also, in my estimation, don't really think they even understand the language of making it broader. Like, they're just guessing based upon whatever they watched on an airplane last night or something, you know? And so I had a real tough time with that, with those battles. And another thing is there was a big fear about making Laurel's character unlikable, which I hate that term. I honestly think that when it comes to lead characters, the moment you understand their wants at all, or the moment you're drawn into maybe an enigmatic quality, they become inserts. They draw you in. I resist the idea of likable. Like their likability is a nebulous concept when it comes to the main character of a story. You know, like, yeah, sure, Michael J. Fox is just likable. The dude just is a likable guy. But a character can, I think the audience transference comes more from a beat or a moment that lets you know something about them, or makes them seem vulnerable, or makes you understand a want as less than it does, like, let's say, their behavior. So there was there's a version of the movie that where Laurel does bite people, because I think it's kind of a bit lame to be like, her only character sort of idea is that biting people bad. I don't think that's a very complex idea, and that's not what I had initially intended. My idea was, this is a young person who has a presented version of themselves as an adult that they feel like they want to become, and is doing what I think a lot of young people do, being very sort of like self-involved and working against what they even want out of themselves. And in my version of the edit, we see Laurel push her friends away a little bit more, and we see her go down the rabbit hole of biting people, and start to think like, what am I doing? I need help. I kind of need out of this, which I think is a little bit more complex than as it lays. I think the edit as it stands does no favors for Andy, the character of Andy, or the character of Mark, and I still think that it works. And I especially think like James's performance is really good and is able to, in those moments, like bring a lot to it and make it feel lived in. But I think there's when Andy and Mark both make their sort of push away moments of like, hey, we need you, or when those confrontational moments that they have seem to be pitched a little higher than maybe the movie's earned, possibly, and that's because this subplot's been mitigated or taken out, and I just fundamentally disagree with that. There's a version of the movie that has those elements restored, and by the way, it's not like my version of the movie is like 2.5 hours long. It's the same length of time. See my version, I cut that fucking flying scene because that wire work drives me up the fucking wall. We had one night to shoot all the crane stuff, you know, and I was supposed to have 2 cranes, and then I show up, there's only fucking one, and nobody had any time for prep or rehearsal on anything in that movie. I mean, we had less than a month from like of prep, and I didn't have most of my departments till a week or 2 before shooting. I mean, I wanted Nicole pretty early in the process, but you weren't officially cast till about 2.5 weeks before we started shooting, you know? So it was like real run and gun the whole damn movie. So I cut that fucking flying scene. And also I trust an audience enough not to have a flashback in the movie of a scene you just fucking saw, where it's like that's like seated in there at one moment, and it like there's, you know, obviously you can tell it chaps my ass, but the movie as it stands, I'm very proud of. I'm glad anybody would give it a shot or like it, and I'm not making excuses. There's a lot of things in that movie that might fall short that are definitely my fault, you know.
So what you're saying is anyone who liked Bit needs to start release the Elmore cut hashtag, right?
I would rather make a no, because I think, you know, that would be a nice thing to do, and I get the joke, but I would rather make another movie and just have full control from end to end, than sort of fix this movie. Like, no, guys, this is the one I really wanted. I think it'd be much better to just move forward with what is text now, whether I like it or not, because text now is this is Laurel's character, and she doesn't bite people, and that's what I have to live with, and I have to mount another story based on that idea, and try to enrich that in some way. And then luckily, I think even with this edit, some of the stuff, the major theme, I think, is still intact and wasn't harmed at all, which is the idea of power, which is what is power, and what, I mean, yes, patriarchal power, and my Dracula stand-in representing all that idea, but like the idea of what power means and what it does to people to even enter into the institution of power, you know.
No,
I think
totally.
I think remains there, you know.
So that's a question that I would like to throw over to James, in that, you know, for Mark sort of is somewhat of our audience stand-in, and if anything, that's one of the harder roles to have, because, you know, everyone else gets to go off and be cool vampires and fight, and you sort of have to stay somewhat grounded in reality, but then you get that moment when it's no longer reality for you. So how do you juggle that, you know, going from this character that's basically the audience vision into, you know, now you're involved in this power structure?
That's a great question. You mean going into a potential sequel? Yeah, so I'm really excited about how that's going to play out. I love that at the end there's this moment where, you know, like our roles as siblings have sort of fully flipped. Even though I'm the older brother that's always been the one looking out for his younger sister, it's like suddenly like he has to go to his younger sister for like guidance on everything now. It's like what the like, and at the end he's just totally like, vampires, right? You know, like that whole moment where he's just like, what the fuck, you know? And I'm really like excited to see if we ever do get to make a sequel, how that, like, because I would want him to change, you know. I would want to see a change in him and his story arc from the first one. But yeah, like you said, I kind of recognized that I had to sort of be the audience player in the first film, and I really was all, I loved how it culminated at the end with Laurel. I just felt like it all made perfect sense and felt like it felt totally real to me, in that, if that was the scenario. But that's a great question. I don't know. I'd love to see what happens with Mark. I'd like to say he you know, has a good heart, but you never know. He might go down some off paths. Laurel might have to bring him back. Who knows? I have no idea what Brad's cooking up. I'm just looking forward to it if we ever get to do it.
I mean, I'll put it out there. I would pay good money for a Mark and Duke showdown in like a street fight, like
right?
for a street bite. There's my pun. I'm done. I'm sorry.
BJ, your words to ears right there.
Street fight.
There's a lot of potential in that, but I think it's even better to have them just have to cohabitate, and her seething hatred of him, and his and his completely well-meaning dunderheaded need to just, you know, like, to try to like please, like, just well-intended, like, oh, I'll win everyone over, and I think is more interesting than just having her kill him, because there would be no showdown. Duke would destroy him.
Duke destroys everything.
Yeah.
That's true. That would be true. Yeah.
You know, speaking of Duke, we have a good amount of questions and about 10 minutes left, so I'm gonna jump into those. Valeria asked, actually, that question's next. Sorry, the Duke one. Arthur asked, can anyone talk about Diana Hopper as Duke and how that casting came about, / what was most memorable about working with her?
I'll be fast. The casting Diana was, I had written the role for this certain actress who was not made available. Dude, who cares about the reasons? But I'd immediately jumped from there. One producer had suggested Diana, and I recalled her from Goliath, like off the top of my head. And I was like, I had done these designs of these characters and I had drawn them out. And I was like, of course she looks a lot like it. And she's got this, I compare Diana to Steve McQueen. She like, being around Diana is like being around a gravity well. She is just the most comfortable in her own skin person I've ever met. Very cool, very, very, she gives off a feeling like of detached irony without even trying, like, and almost to the point where it looks like she doesn't have to work to do stuff, but she does work very hard. She's not showy about it. Like, so the casting her was just, that's who I wanted. And I had to sort of, you know, I didn't get much friction about wanting her in the role. There was an attempt to go for bigger names, and I had to kind of wait that out. But really, everybody was on board with Diana as an actor, and I was just so honored that she wanted to do it. And my favorite moment with her, acting wise, is there's a scene where she kills a dude and then smokes a cigarette, and I just, in my head, that looked so much like how I saw it in my head, and I was just like really pleased. And that was the first thing I shot with her, and I just knew, I was like, because if Duke doesn't work, this movie's going to be insufferable. And when I saw that sort of come together, and then I also kept that cigarette butt she uses in that scene. But when I saw that come together, I was like, this is going to work. She's great. She's
awesome.
Yeah.
Our next question comes from Abby. What's the deal with this DVD thing nobody knew about?
I don't know what the deal is on that. Next question.
We have a DVD. Buy it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Comment from Brandy. I am curious about the not getting pregnant in the sequel line. It felt so Nicole.
Yeah, I went over to the sound designer's place, and
This room right here.
yep, and we just shot out a bunch of bumpers, and that's the one we went with.
I came up with that and asked Nicole if that was too dark, and she's like, there was between two of them, and Nicole was like, no, we got to go with this one. It's got to be this one. You know, I didn't want voiceover in the movie, but the producers were like, you either put voiceover or we're gonna pay another actor, one of the other characters in the movie, to put it in there. So it's just like, oh fuck, Jesus Christ, let's do this. And so I on the fly came up with that, just to make sure I could at least have some control of that element.
Mm-hmm. All right, this question comes from Valeria. How does it feel for Nicole to go from a longtime role as Naya Nal / Dreamer to the role of Laurel? I'm sorry. It was backwards, wasn't it?
Yeah, I actually did Laurel first, because we shot that in summer of 2018. So I got the role of Nia as we were shooting. We were shooting for 20 days, and I had one day off, and on my one day off, I went and I auditioned. And so going from Laurel to Nia was a little weird, because especially when Nia's first introduced, she's very like kind of timid, but at the same time outgoing, energetic, bubbly, and she's very bright and unsure of herself. Whereas I think Laurel, I was like, oh wait, I have to be nice. Oh, I have to be nice in this scene. I can't call anyone a bitch. Damn. Whereas I felt like Laurel, I was able to just kind of, I don't know, have much more of a, I don't know, they feel very, they feel very different, because, but at the same time, they were similar, because, you know, I think Laurel was a little unsure of herself going into her whole vampirism also. So that was similar, but Nia's a lot nicer than Laurel.
This question is from John. John wants to know if the shot at the end with James wearing the sunglasses and the shirt was in any way an homage to your father, Bill, and his role in Near Dark.
Yes, it was. You know, that was actually Brad's idea, though. And he pulled me aside, I think the night before we shot the scene. And he said, hey, I have this great idea, but let me know how you're feeling on it, because, you know, it's totally up to you. But he's like, and then he pulls out the sunglasses and he's like, look at this. And he's kind of like, are you thinking what I'm thinking? And I was like, man, that would be a beautiful homage. I would love to do that. And, you know, I love anything that I can do as an homage to my dad, who was, you know, my best friend, is something like I'm always proud to do. And Near Dark is definitely one of the best vampire movies, biased, but I think
it is.
Of all time.
America.
And so yeah, that totally is a very purposeful homage to my dad's character Severin. And I'm really happy it's in there.
Awesome. We'll do this as our final question, then we'll wrap it up. Tressie asks, how do we help support BIT to make a sequel happen? Also, thank you for coming together to do this. Watch it.
Buy it. I mean, that sounds flippant, but it's just true. Like, I mean, anything helps. Like, engaging with it in any way. Fuck, throwing it up. I mean, I know there's gonna be people who torrent it or whatever, watch it free on Tubi or whatever the fuck. But like, so anything does help. But you know, ultimately, it's numbers that'll move the needle. It's somebody's got to look at some numbers and go, oh, this costs this much money, and it's making this much money, or it's getting this much attention. And so just, you know, like, you're already doing it even by being on the asking this question, you know, like and having seen it at all, you know, but take to the social medias and spread the word, you know.
Talk about it, buy it if you can, rent it. It's like $5 on Amazon. It's a great gift, Halloween, birthday. You know, if you need a Halloween movie night, rent it, get some buddies over, have a great time, and talk about it on social media.
I'm not saying steal your parents' credit card to buy it, but
I mean, I am.
Okay, cool. Saved my ass. Anyways, thank you everyone for watching this. It's been such a pleasure. And I mean, like I said at the beginning, I love the hell out of this film. So it's been a blast. Thank you, BJ, for co-moderating this. Thank you, Nicole, Brad, and James for doing this. It's been a really great time.
Yeah.
And for our viewers, we have so much in store as far as our Dissecting Horror panel. We have just an insane amount of panels coming up in the next couple weeks. We have a Texas Chainsaw 3 reunion. We have a Halloween 4 reunion. We have so much in the works that we hope you'll join us again and again for these, because we're trying to give you some entertainment during these really weird times. So yeah, we appreciate it. Have a great Halloween and take care.
Happy Halloween. Thank you guys so much. You guys are both amazing.
You know those teen vampire movies that feel like the horny soap opera fever dreams of an 8th grade diary? Here's how mine began.
The graduating class of Central Oregon High.
Be safe.
Oh my God, guys, I'm gonna be fine. My first night in LA, and it's already the best night in LA.
Hi. We're going to after hours party if you want to come.
That's enough. Shoveled a lot in your life, haven't you? How would you like to hold the keys to the kingdom for a change? Now would be the time for any questions.
Were you guys like
Vampires?
Yup. Do you guys kill people?
Indiscriminately.
Innocent people?
It's like 80-20. Rule number 1, never turn a man into a vampire. Men can't handle power. Welcome to Fight Club.
Fight Club?
What about bit girls? Sounds like we're part of STEM or something.
Welcome home.
What, no coffin?
Why would we do that?
'Cause it's dope. You're staying away from drugs, right? Yes, Mom. My life's a horror movie. Life's full of things you never think should happen, and then it does. I'm going to be 18 forever.
People just think you're aging well.